Welcome to CISOs Insiders Podcast, powered by GRC Consulting. In this podcast, we'll be interviewing leading CISOs and security leaders in the industry for light, eye-level conversations. Here, they share advice and tips, talk about their biggest accomplishments and failures, favorite drinks, key influencers, and much more. We encourage you to walk away with at least one insight that will help you better yourself or your business. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more content, please check us out on social media.
And welcome, everybody. Today I'm speaking with Thomas Kinsella. Thomas is actually the co-founder and the COO of a company called Tines. But before that, he spent many years as an information security and cybersecurity director in multiple capacities. I see, Thomas, that you started off your career over at Deloitte, where you've done a lot of forensic works as well as IT security. From that point on, I think you held a position in eBay in a similar capacity, I would say, but you know, I might be misreading it. You'll have an opportunity to correct me in a minute. From that point on, I think you spent a lot of years in DocuSign building the security operations there. So definitely interesting to talk about during this podcast. And I think directly after DocuSign, you founded your own company. So that's quite a journey. Thank you. And, you know, I invite you to step in and introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the warm introduction, and it's great to be here, great to be on. Yeah, it's very similar to what you said. Started out in professional services in Deloitte, learned a lot about how to do things and a lot about how not to do things while I was there as well. eBay was a little bit different. eBay, I worked in the technical investigations organizations. That was working on large scale attribution and prosecution of organized criminal networks that were compromising tens of thousands of accounts on eBay or PayPal. eBay and PayPal at the time were the number 2 and number 1 phished brands in the world. So we were targeted a lot for carding, for malware, for account takeovers. And my team were also responsible for, I suppose, working with law enforcement during any intrusions or large scale incidents in the platform. So learned a ton there. Really enjoyed that job. Super interesting working with law enforcement and dealing a lot of commercial malware as well. From there, I spent a little bit of time in the US and then moved back and spent a couple of years running the security operations team in DocuSign. So grew that team from 2 to about 30 people while we went public. And we were responsible for everything from incident response and threat intelligence to security, infrastructure, discovery, fraud, forensics, pretty much everything on the security side of the house that wasn't compliance. Had a really interesting time there learning about security operations and how to build a team, how to scale a team, how to work with vendors, and how to deal with the challenge of a company that's growing super fast, that has enormous momentum, but that also thinks that security is a super important part of the business. So enjoyed it, and I've had a very privileged career, and then obviously started Tines on the back of that.
Great, interesting journey, and thank you again for taking the time to sit down with me today. The purpose of this podcast is basically not to talk specifically about anything in particular in regards to our space in the industry, but more along the line to, put you on the spotlight, learn more from your experience and expertise, do some experience sharing, and basically understand your route into the place that you are today. And so, from what I'm seeing and hearing, it's been an interesting journey, right? You've spent a lot of years in the cybersecurity field, and then you went ahead and founded your own company. So I'm certain some of our listeners would be intrigued to learn about their journey. I always like to start off with a couple of icebreaker questions here. So if you could share anything about your marital status and favorite drink, that would be great.
Yeah, so I'm in a relationship. It's going great. She's listened to a couple of the episodes with me. We went on a trip a couple of weekends ago, and we listened to a couple of episodes to get a flavor. So I'm sure she'll want me to say hi. My favorite drink is honestly water these days. I am trying to drink far more of it than I used to, but mostly sparkling water, which is not nearly as good for you as water, but it's the way for me to be able to drink a lot of it. I'm also, as an Irish person, unfortunately guilty of liking Guinness a little bit too much, and then I just simply couldn't survive without coffee. But I think that's part and parcel of the role that I'm in right now.
Okay, thank you for that, and say hi to your significant other for me as well. So let's dive right in. I mean, if there's one thing you wish you had known before you began a career, what would that be?
I think that every single person in cybersecurity is learning all of the time. That I used to think at the start of my career that there were certain people that knew everything, or that certain people that had a huge amount of experience, and as a result, they were infallible. But in reality, it's not about that. Nobody knows everything, and that it's also therefore not about finding the smartest person that you want to work with, the person that knows the most. For your career, once you get, for me anyway, once I got to a certain stage, it wasn't so much about like finding the smartest people. It was finding the people that I enjoyed working with, that were curious, that had a passion to do the right thing. And then I suppose hooking in with them and making sure that I was challenged. I think that the thing that I really wished I knew was that, yeah, it's no one thing is going to make it better. No one certificate, no one incident. It's about learning, getting 1% better every week, week upon week, and taking the opportunity to learn wherever you can.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, this is a recurring theme. A lot of my interviewees mentioned that the learning, the constant learning aspect that's always out there, right? If there's one biggest failure that you can talk about, and what did you learn out of it, what would that be?
I was really struggling between two here. Like the first. The second one was just very simple. That when I was running the security operations team, at one point I was unable to persuade somebody to do something that I thought was absolutely critical, and as a result, we just suffered several incidents, and that was because I was unable to persuade like a hypothetical IT team to patch a flaw, and I could see it coming, and I could predict it, but just was unable to make that change. And that was it was a business decision. It makes sense, but it really I learned a lot on my approach and how not to approach things based on doing that. But I think the incident that I keep coming back to, that's like a standout version of my biggest failure, was when we had a major incident in one of my companies where we just had a large scale intrusion, and I was relatively junior in my career, and I believed people when they said they had it. So I couldn't understand in this incident. I was like, I'm seeing this, and I think this is going on. But everyone else was like, no, it's fine. And we eventually brought in this external company, and this external company, extremely well known. They investigated, and everyone was like, yeah, everything's perfect. But through the week or two during the incident, I was kept saying, I just don't understand. Like, I'm seeing this activity over here, and I believe that this is happening, but I trusted that this crew had it, and in reality they didn't have it. They didn't know, and they were missing some. They just weren't seeing what me and some of the other folks were seeing. And I think it's that. Yeah, I suppose what I learned from that was that I now no longer accept an answer if I don't understand it. That I actually have to keep on asking the question, being like, please explain it to me, because I just don't see why this isn't important. I didn't have the courage at the time, didn't have the belief in my own skills, and that it's not trying to be arrogant in any way here. There's loads of things I get wrong all the time, but I think it's that having if I don't understand something, just the tenacity to keep on asking, saying, hey, just please explain it to me a little bit more. Explain it to me like I'm 5, and then hopefully I'll be able to understand that afterwards. But it was a real it hurt. It hurt when something that you really care about is happening, and that you just don't have the courage and convictions to push through it.
Did you at the time, did you feel that that trust was compromised, that you wasn't able to trust your team anymore?
It wasn't the team. The team were really good. It was leadership that I wasn't able to trust afterwards. That leadership were saying, yeah, it's fine, and that it did. It really damaged my trust with some folks on the team. And it's like not my direct manager. My direct manager was fantastic, but some other folks in the wider InfoSec team that, it's I think communication, it didn't break down, but it was unsurprising that within a year the vast majority of people had kind of left the organization and moved on. So
got it. Okay, thank you for that. And having spoken about your biggest failure, as the perceived biggest failure, what would you say your biggest accomplishment was?
I think so. I'm going to have to say starting Tines here, and I don't want to be the vendor that shills here, so I'm not going to go into Tines too much. But having the courage to go out and start, and the privilege, I'll talk about that as well. The privilege to go out and start my own company, but having the courage to go out and start my own company and actually make it a little bit of success so far. But beyond that, it's also the individual steps. So anybody can go out and start something. It's having it be the company that I kind of wished we could have worked with. So having transparent pricing, having like a free community edition, things like that we really value. So being that security company that I wished we could have worked with is really it's really important. But even beyond that, it's about the people, right? It's about the people that you worked with. So making the first hire in the US, getting your first customer, and being able to tell some of those stories is so I think we often don't look back on the good times in security. We look back on a lot of incidents, but it's really nice to look back on some of the good times. Be like, hey, that was great. And the fact that I'm able to work with some smart people and hire some friends and work with people that I call friends is probably the biggest success.
Yeah, thank you for that. And you know what? I want to expand a bit about that because this is part of your story. I mean, whatever happened in the past, what is it, like 13 years led you to where you are right now. Mm-hmm. One of the co-founders of Tines. And I'd like to understand more about that journey, like your different roles in the cybersecurity mm-hmm. space, and what led you to founding Tines, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So like I think when I was working with a little bit in DocuSign, there was like a huge amount of burnout. Not in DocuSign, sorry, in Deloitte, there was a huge amount of burnout. We were just professional services, the very bottom of the rung. Any paying customer could come in and say, hey, we want to throw people at the problem, and I'd be the person that was thrown at the problem. That was fine. I learned so much in that role. But I think in eBay there were a lot of incidents that we dealt with where we needed to move fast. So we needed to, start analyzing 50 IPs or 100 IPs like at the same time, or we needed to start blocking IPs, or we needed to investigate 1,000 phishing emails. And we had some tools, but those tools took a long time to build, and those processes took a long time to build. But when I was in DocuSign, that was where it kind of really hit home. And that was because I was managing a team. Same as Owen, my co-founder, our CEO. We just felt it was too hard. So we had great people. We had a good stack. Like we had, Splunk, Carbon Black. We had, really good tools. But at the same time, the better we got at detecting, the more we had to respond to. And no matter how fast we moved, we kept on having more incidents to deal with. And it just ended up that we just felt this sense of inevitability that something was going to happen. And what we knew we didn't want to just hire somebody and then just put them analyzing like adware. We knew we didn't want to hire someone and put them like blocking IPs on the firewall. We knew we didn't want to, hire somebody like cybersecurity. Like talent takes a long time to hire. And if you put them just, analyzing a phishing email that's being reported to spam at abusebox.com day in, day out, they're going to burn out. And even worse than that, like they're going to burn out and they're going to be stressed. And then you're going to have that incident because companies are going to get compromised these days. And when you have that incident, all that work they were spending all their time on is still going to be there. But now you have to move even faster. You have to, you have to be able to respond. You have to be able to build new detections, to have a flexible platform that's able to, that you're able to, I suppose, to move on. And when we looked around, we looked at what our peers were doing. We just didn't see anybody that was doing this, but we did see there had to be a promise in automation. So there were a couple of I suppose, the V1 kind of sources out there, the likes of your Phantoms and your Demistos, and people were getting some value out of those. But when myself and Owen were looking at them, we kind of said, look, in order to use these, you genuinely have to be a developer. You genuinely have to hire somebody that knows how to code, knows how to develop. And the people that know how to develop, they want to be building their own threat intel platform. They don't want to be building a plugin to create a ticket in Jira. They don't want to be building a script so that they can block an IP on a firewall. They want to actually be analyzing large amounts of data or building some fancy machine learning system to classify X, Y, and Z. And we knew that the people that we were hiring just wouldn't do that work, especially in a medium-sized team. If you're a Bank of America or something like that, maybe it would work. So I think we passionately cared about the people that were working on the team. And we wanted to make sure that they were learning a ton, but they just couldn't learn a ton if they were overwhelmed with alerts. So we said, hey, there has to be that better way. And yeah, because we looked at all the platforms, we said the better way is to build a platform that they could then automate themselves into a better job, automate their own processes. So we've got a couple of users, like when we're building out in Tines right now, we've got a couple of users in mind where we're like, would this feature be understandable by this person? And is this person, like is Tines simple enough that somebody that's using it that isn't a developer is going to be able to automate their own workflows? So that was kind of the journey. But yeah, it really is born from experience of incidents, born from having to move fast, and born from like just passionately caring about the lives of security analysts, and that knowing that when that incident comes along, you have to move fast. That was the genesis of the platform. So
okay,
thank you for giving me the time to
yeah,
talk
I mean,
about that.
no, that's super interesting. But and you're talking about your career. Is there any single piece of advice you could give out to someone wanting to pursue a career similar to yours?
Yeah, sure. So I think I said this a little bit earlier, but I'm extremely privileged, right? I managed to be in a position where I somehow earned enough money where I was able to quit my job and start my company. So I don't want to say that like everybody's able to just do this one thing and you're able to do that. I'm also a straight white guy in tech, so I'm very much the beneficiary of a whole load of positive discrimination. That's fortunately for me, unfortunately for everybody else, and it's obviously something that we're trying to change here too. But if I was to give people, I suppose, advice, if you wanted to pursue a career, I think that point that I made earlier, that it's never going to be that one thing. It's not like that one piece of advice that you say, hey, just like become a developer before you start. It's not going to be learn the business, and if you learn the business, then you're going to be a much better CISO or a much better director. It's about taking those opportunities whenever they come up to just learn more. And to a certain extent, doesn't matter. It matters, but it doesn't matter if you redefine what success means and redefine what failure means, so that it doesn't matter if you become that CISO of this company over here, a director over here, or if you're just really happy over here. I think take the risks, take the opportunity to learn at every opportunity. And also, it's okay to fail as well. I moved to the US, it didn't work out very well, and I moved back after 6 months, and that's totally okay as well. So yeah, take as many opportunities as you can, network with as many people, meet as many people, talk to as many people, and just learn. There's so many amazing people in the security world that you'll be able to learn from, and hopefully they'll be able to pass on some wisdom to some other people in the future as well.
Okay, switching gears here a bit, let's talk a bit about an organizational structure. What are your feelings about the role of a CISO that's actually part of the IT organization?
It's so funny. We deal with CISOs like day in, day out, and it's so great to see that the role be elevated to, I suppose now, usually, well, it's like security is a board level issue at this point in time. But I think there's pros and cons for the CISO to be in the IT organization for sure. I think, like, as a pro, the CISO absolutely needs to be involved in pretty much any strategic decision that an organization takes, especially its IT team. And, if they're part of the strategy for rolling out an office or purchasing certain tools, if they're involved, they're aware, and they're able to influence those decisions, and they're able to put a halt to certain decisions before they happen, or to have their hands in those decisions, so that they can influence them in the right way. So there's definitely a pro there. And unless you're singing from the same hymn sheet as the CIO, it's going to be really, really hard to do that. So having a really good relationship with the CIO is absolutely critical, and obviously reporting to them can be very functional. Having said that, the CISO should also, and does also, have a huge role to play, depending on the organization as well, on the engineering side of the house, on the technical side of technical operations side of the house. And certainly right now, for organizations that we're dealing with, we're seeing a lot of folks focus more on their production environment. It's now a lot more like AWS is or GCP or Azure is just as challenging as your corp environment. In fact, it's also more misunderstood than a lot of corp environments, that it's a little bit more of a black box where people don't really understand, and as a result, they'll pay for great tools, but tools like Lacework or Orca or Wiz, where they're like, I just don't know what I'm supposed to do, so I'll purchase this tool in the hope that it'll give me security. But I think the big con side of the house of putting security or putting the CISO under the CIO or even under the VP of technology or your CTO is that the CISO has to in some ways be independent. They have to be able to call out and say, actually, this isn't the right call. And if they're involved in making those decisions on how to deploy software, what software to purchase, they often can't have that independent voice of saying, well, actually, I just want to register my objection here, because by definition, if their boss isn't going to succeed in something, it's very hard for them to, to sabotage them or say, actually, I'm going to veto something. That shouldn't happen, but it's still even that perceived threat or that perceived conflict of interest can be quite challenging. So I think in order to present the argument, in order to be independent, it's probably important for them to actually be independent. I think at this point, though, most CISOs or a lot of CISOs are fighting for that independence, and it's great to see.
But in your experience, do you think there's a shift in the market where you see more and more like board level positions for CISOs?
I don't know if board, like, certainly yes, more boards are asking about it more, and they have to be. It's critical. I also think that the board, like the CISO gets to see the board now more often than they will get to, the CIO will get to see the board, which is like there'll be security updates on every 2 or 3 board meetings, which is fantastic. But I don't know if it's like reporting directly to the board. Obviously, I think it's more that they will be on a lot more incidents, or in a lot more instances, be reporting to the CEO, or maybe the CFO. Not so much the chief legal officer, or the chief technical officer, or the CIO. That they've got that little bit more independence, and that it's viewed as its own independent area, which is just as important as some of the other technical areas.
Yeah, and I'm seeing this shift as well. Okay, great. Let's see, what is it? So I wanted to pick your brains about a couple of other topics here. In terms of resources, you mentioned that you're constantly learning and whatnot. What are the best resources that have helped you along the way?
I think there's a couple. I think I've missed conferences, to be honest. Being able to go and meet people in person and have those conversations over COVID has left me, or not being able to go has left me poor. But I will say that there's been a bit of a rise in Slack channels, and certainly like being able to talk to peers is still super important. The place that I think, I know this comes up a lot on your podcast, the place that I think I learned the most though is Twitter. That honestly, being able to gut check a lot of things very quickly, like, is this hypothetical incident or hypothetical CVE, is this a P1 that it's all hands on deck, or is this something that is probably more of a storm in a teacup, even though some vendor has managed to make it look like it's a P1? The number of people that are sharing information, sharing IOCs, sharing mitigations on Twitter is incredible, and a lot of them are like very unthanked. If you look at like Emotet, for example, like the Crypto Lamus crew have done an amazing job at sharing indicators. Same with those people that share stuff on abuse.ch, etc. I feel that I feel that there's so much opportunity there and so much to learn that I spent a lot of time on Twitter just taking in and accumulating a lot of information. There's a lot of great blogs out there at the moment as well, but for me, Twitter is probably the place to be.
Okay, interesting. I have to confess that I'm not that active on Twitter, not as a consumer, not as anyone who posts anything, but I might need to carve out some time for that.
I'm more of a lurker than a poster. I don't post that much. I'm shy, even though my marketing team love when I post and love when I get on podcasts. But yeah, I spend a lot of time just having conversations, just reading random Twitter threads and going down like deep rabbit holes. And yeah, it's like sometimes it's absolutely useless, but a lot of the time I've learned a lot just from spending those 15-20 minutes understanding that challenge, or understanding this new type of malware, etc.
Got you. Okay. Let's see. So I wanted to ask you about, my usual question here. Is there one common myth about our profession that you wanted to debunk?
I think this is like there's loads of myths, and I love all of the answers that have been given. The one that I give is that you just cannot purchase one single tool and like be secure. And it drives me crazy when I see like organizations that will advertise, we stop breaches, or customers like with this product don't get compromised. And it's happening less and less these days, but even still there's so many just over promises in security where they're preying on your fear. And yeah, I wish I could say that it's purchase this tool, maybe you'll get better. But even then, most of the time, like purchasing a tool it's the same as buying weights. It's like, you can buy as many weights as you want, but until you start tuning it, until you start actually using them, you're not gonna get any better. And you can accumulate as much gym equipment as you want, but you're gonna actually have to do the work for it. Yeah, the whole we stop breaches thing drives me crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Same with all your AI, like machine learning. There's loads of don't get me wrong. There's like machine learning is absolutely true. It's fascinating, and AI is incredible. But we use AI, and therefore we're able to detect anomalies like 0 days right out of the box. You don't need to worry. That drives me crazy.
Yeah, I just feel personally that AI and machine learning are the newest buzzwords right now that everybody's using. Not necessarily everybody understands anything about that, but that's just my personal opinion. Talking a bit about let's talk a bit about the market today, about our space. In your opinion, what are the main concerns that CISOs nowadays have?
I think there's a lot of concerns they have. I think a lot of them are should be concerned about like their stack. They should be concerned about their influence in the boardroom. They should be concerned about their team. But the big thing for me is definitely their team. There was a great survey. We put out a survey, but there's a lot of them that have come out that show that 64% of analysts intend to leave their jobs in the next 12 months. It's not that they will, but they say they intend to. And part of that's due to the great resignation. Part of that's due to feeling burnout. But it's just so hard to keep your team happy these days. And if you're not looking after them, I think that your security stack, your security stature, your security posture is just not going to be the same in 12 months if you've had a huge turnover of staff. So if I'm a CISO, what I'm worried about most is making sure that my team are happy and making sure that they've got the resources necessary to do their job, and they feel supported in their job, and they feel respected in their job. I also think that a lot of them are now, especially with like, I'm not going to say it's coming more and more often, but you still do see a lot of a lot of tasks that you have to move faster to very, very fast in. It's the agility and the speed that you have to be able to move at now. That it's no longer there's a CV, we can patch it in a week's time, or like those old like for criticals you've got a week to patch. It's just no longer that you can see a CV come out, you can see it be exploited in the wild 24 hours later if it's not being exploited already. So the ability to detect, put in new detections, put in new alerts, or to patch very, very fast, or to have just even better visibility in your environment very, very fast is critical. That if I'm a CISO, I'm no longer, you should still be measuring like mean time to detect, mean time to respond. But what I'm really measuring is how quickly I can build out a detection for something that's just new around the corner, and how much fidelity I can get. That's for me, that's how, if I'm trying to measure how good my security is, not how much it's improving. I'm trying to measure how good my security is. It's how quickly I can build out detections and deploy them very, 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 very quickly.
Okay, and expanding about that, I mean, in your opinion, what are the most important skills CISOs nowadays should have? We've spoken about the shift. We've spoken about what's going on in the industry a bit. If you could,
I think like there's definitely a need for those technical skills that a lot of your guests talk about. So I'm not necessarily saying you have to be a developer, but you do have to understand. Like, it can't be that you hear the word Kubernetes and start shivering, like, oh, I'm not really sure what they're talking about. It has to be that you have to understand the stack, you have to understand the technology, and then you also have to understand like the major attacks that are going on these days as well. I think a lot of people do understand that. I do also, however, think that like as a CISO, you have to understand the bottom line and the top line of your business. That security is both a differentiator in terms of sales, so affecting your top line, and also if something's compromised, definitely an issue that's going to affect like if you have to move fast and spend a huge amount of money or pay out on something, definitely going to affect your bottom line. So being able to understand the business impact of all of the decisions and also weigh up the risks and communicate those risks effectively to your team and to your partners in the CIO, the CTO, the CFO is super important. And I realize that's a very broad answer. The CISO should have a huge amount of skills, but realistically, like you wouldn't get to be a CTO without, or a CFO or a CIO without having like business and tech skills. If we want the CISO to be elevated to reporting to the CIO, and we want the CISO to be elevated to reporting to the board, then they have to have those skills. They have to level up, and they have to be seen to be a business enabler and a business promoter, adding value and saying, hey, this is actually how we can differentiate ourselves.
So I can surmise based on your answer that this is where the CISO role is going right now, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they're elevating themselves, and there's a lot of great examples of people that are doing that. So,
okay, let's see. We still have a couple of minutes left for a couple of last questions.
Sure.
In your opinion, what would we see in the cybersecurity world next?
I think like it's so hard to predict. So like more of the same and a whole little different. But I definitely think there's going to be more an acceleration of current trends. So more vulnerabilities in open source tools, more supply chain attacks. I think ransomware will still increase. As a result from that, I think that there's going to be an increase in people purchasing and an increase in the price of cyber insurance as people have to pay out more breaches are disclosed, as GDPR. I don't think GDPR fines will necessarily increase, but as more transparency will breed more I suppose more lawsuits and things like that as well. I think on the defense side of the house, or the vendor side of the house, I think there's going to be more standardization. So I think it's really, I talked about how fast, being able to measure your detections based on how fast, or measure your maturity based on how fast you're able to build out detections. I also think that you have to be able to measure your maturity based on some frameworks. So there's a lot of frameworks out there. The MITRE defense framework, there's a Palantir framework that actually discuss how you can actually measure the maturity of your organization. But on top of that, I think you have to be able to standardize a lot of that as well. So standardize your detections using Sigma rules, using like the detection equivalent of Yara rules. Otherwise, you're gonna, if I'm like looking at the future, you're going to say, hey, we're secured in all these areas, but in reality, you're not. You've got a gaping hole over here. There's a lot of different areas that I think security can go in. But the last area that I'll talk about is just like, there has to be getting the most out of your staff, and that's through automation. So in order to make sure that your team aren't burning out, in order to make sure that you're able to move fast, there's going to be a huge investment in automation.
Mm-hmm. And what would you define, and this might relate to my previous question, but what would you define as innovation in our space?
Yeah, so it's so rare that we see security as an innovative field. It's so rare that we see security as something that's bringing life to the business or bringing value to the business. I think that's one thing that, and if you'll excuse me, the shill that like Tines is actually doing a really good job at that. You very rarely hear the CISO be thanked for doing anything other than stopping an incident. What we see customers doing now is like with the automation platform, they'll like get a huge amount of value out of the platform, and then we'll see people like an engineering team see it be used in the middle of an incident, and they'll be like, whoa, how did you do that? How did you move so fast? How are you so agile? Or you'll see users be offboarded in the middle of an incident, or just in regular cadence. As soon as they leave the organization, they're deprovisioned within 20 minutes or half an hour as a result of automation. And then the IT team are like, wow, that's actually incredible. You moved very, very fast there. How did you do that? And I say, oh, we did that using Tines. So for innovation, I think there's just there's an opportunity to use automation. There's huge opportunities to bring the best security practices and the best tools to other parts of the organization.
Okay. We have time for one last question, and this is on a personal note, on the personal side here. If you had unlimited funds, what would you do with your life?
So I think right now in my life, I'd probably stay in Tines and probably stick at it for another couple of years. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of growth, but I'm definitely not sticking at it forever. It's it's a lot of hard work. If you told me I couldn't stay, I would become a historian. So that's my if I was braver as a kid, I would have chosen history in university, and I would have I would have done I don't know if I'd be cut out for a PhD or anything like that, but that's like on my spare time. I love reading history books. And I think that if I could do it, I'd spend my time going back to college, drinking my coffee, drinking my water, reading a lot of history books, and going deep into the history of Ireland or elsewhere. That's and travel as well, obviously. Maybe do that while traveling the world, learning about the history of various different places.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure it's as lucrative as the cybersecurity field, so I'm not sure if you would be able to afford traveling so much. But,
you haven't heard of all the big history firms? No, VCs are massively interested in these days. It's
I'm sure.
All the rage.
If you could travel back to time, I'm sure they would be interested. But
there you go. Yeah.
Well, anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me today, Thomas. I can see that you're driven, you're passionate about what you're doing. You certainly have an interesting story, like how your, various positions in the cybersecurity field led you to founding your own company. And what's the best way to reach out to you? I mean, if any of our listeners is interested either in, having a conversation with you or, wanted to learn more about Tines, what's the best way?
Absolutely. So for Tines, just tines.com, tines.com. We've got a free trial, not a free trial, free community edition. You can automate 3 stories, 3 workflows for free completely. So definitely go check it out. If you want to reach out to me, I'm on Twitter, Thomas K Sec. So just my name, Thomas K SEC. And I'm on LinkedIn, Thomas Kinsella. And I would love to have conversations. I've had a lot of really smart people and a lot of really passionate people that have been in touch with me throughout the years. I'd love to learn from more people and meet some more people. I'm also obviously, involved in and go to plenty of conferences. So if you want a coffee at RSA or something like that, hit me up. I'd love to meet up.
Yeah. Will you actually be attending RSA in 1 month?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So I'll connect with you offline. We'll be there as well.
Please do. Yeah, it'd be great.
Okay, great. Again, thank you so much. And if we don't have any other summarizing notes, we can wrap this episode up. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.